And this is In the Making, Adobe's podcast about the real work and people who make up the creator economy. Before I introduce my guest this week, I want to take a moment to thank all of you for listening to our very first season. And in an effort to get to know you better, we put together a very brief survey. We'd love to hear from you as we plan season 2. And to thank you for your time and thoughts, we will be giving away 2 12-month memberships to Creative Cloud, which includes access to Adobe Express Premium, our lightweight tool for creatives and small business owners. You'll find full details and the survey link in the show notes. Now on to our show. This is the final episode for the first season of In the Making, and we're going out with a bang. I am so incredibly honored to introduce our final guest, the esteemed Chris Do. Chris is an Emmy Award-winning designer and director, and the CEO and founder of The Futur, an online education platform with the mission of teaching 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love. In his near 30-year career, Chris has served on boards for organizations such as the Society for the Promotion of Japanese Animation, AIGA Los Angeles, and the Emmys Motion and Title Design Peer Group. Chris has taught sequential design for over 15 years at Art Center College of Design as well as Otis College of Art and Design. He has lectured at universities and conferences worldwide, including Adobe Max. That's where he and I met in October. His nearly 1 million Instagram followers rely on him for his practical and inspirational takes on the art of business and the business of art. Welcome to In the Making, Chris. I am so grateful to have you here with us today.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
People listening might not actually know about The Futur and what it's about. What is The Futur? And how is The Futur making education equitable for students and teachers?
The Futur is an experiment on a big idea that I have, which is here, at least in America, good education is very expensive. And so it's oftentimes the avenue for people who have means, who have access, who were raised by the right parents with the right affluence. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And so this bothers me because I'm a refugee from Vietnam. And when I came here with my parents, we didn't have a lot of things. And I don't know how it is that I was able to navigate a public school system, but I'm here and I feel this incredible debt that I need to repay. So what I want to do is to be able to take the most powerful lessons I've learned in business and life and in design to be able to distill it down in a way that's scalable, infinitely scalable, so that it becomes accessible. So if we can democratize education, then maybe we give access to more people to empower them to change their lives and the lives of the people they care about.
I think it started out as an experiment, but now it's just a tool and something that people rely on. And thank you so much for doing that for people. You started teaching, I think, because a friend of yours was a teacher and she couldn't do it and asked you to fill in.
Yeah. What you're talking about is my friend, former employee, Michelle Doherty, is teaching main title design.
Why did you go all in on education? Like, was that something you're passionate about?
This is the big breakthrough for me. That first year in teaching taught me more about myself, about my self-acceptance and self-confidence than anything I had done prior to that point in time, and it still continues to be the main driver of my confidence. A lot of times we question ourselves, like, what is it we know? Is anything I have interesting to anybody? And isn't this obvious to everyone? And it's not until you put yourself in front of students who ask you those questions, kind of like with this reckless abandon that they can ask you anything because it's safe, because we're in school, that you have to search deep into your mind, your psyche, and your soul to say, do I have an answer for this? And surprisingly, more often than not, at least for me, I did. And when I saw their eyes light up, I was thinking to myself, wow, maybe somebody else might want to know this stuff. This is pretty cool. And I started to rebuild my identity around this idea of being an educator, moving away from that of a graphic designer or even an entrepreneur. Like, first and foremost, I think now I describe myself as an educator.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So you've talked about the importance of learning to learn and learning to read in a meaningful way. What do you mean by that?
Okay. So I don't think you'd get a lot of arguments from anybody to say that reading books is a good thing. Most people believe that. So if you read one book, it's better than you read 0 books. But what's better than reading a book? Well, retaining. I ask people, hey, did you read that book? They're like, yeah. Tell me 2 ideas you learned from it. And they can't tell you anything. I said, are you sure you read the book? So if you don't retain anything, what good is the book? So this is why I don't love it when people post like, I read 35 books this year. Well, tell me 2 things you've learned. That might be important. There's one thing that's better than retention, which is application. So I've read books. I remember what I've read. I've applied what I read. And yet there's still another level. So I've applied it, but can I teach it? Which is the 4th realm of mastery. So it's good to read. It's good to remember. It's good to apply. But it's even better to be able to teach those concepts to other people. So what you should be doing is you should be reading the book or learning a lesson or attending a workshop with the intention to teach that workshop or that lesson or that book. That's how I approach it.
I want to talk business. So some people think of you as a branding, art direction, and design expert. You've actually not designed in a very long while. You have always had a passion and probably is a born entrepreneur. I heard that story about you buying candy from your uncle who owns a store. And, you bought a wholesale and then you would sell it to kids for a markup. So you've always been an entrepreneur. When did you decide to really focus on the business aspect of design, generating leads, negotiating, or closing deals?
Well, first in 1995, when I started my business, I realized a very valuable lesson that in design school, nobody talks about marketing, negotiation, sales, and pricing. And so you're thrown to the wolves and you fend for yourself. Luckily, if you have enough talent and opportunities available, you win more than you lose. And that's kind of how I cut my teeth on the business aspect.
It's part of being a designer or just part of being in the world, right?
I think so.
Help me understand the business models of your 2 different companies, Blind and the Futur. Obviously, brand strategy, design consultancy is a different thing from the Futur.
Okay. First of all, I have to clarify something. I don't do any more design consultancy work unless it's through one of my coaching programs. In December 2018, my team looked at me and they said, shouldn't we focus all our energies on education and building an education company? And it was a radical idea at that time. And I said, okay, let's try. Let's go for it and see what happens. So we turned away all our client projects and we've been client free since December of 2018.
Wow.
Last year, I think we did $4.5 million in revenue, all from educational products, coaching, and public speaking and sponsorships.
What do you think made the Futur so successful?
I think there was one very critical lesson that I learned early on. When Jose and I ran the school prior to the Futur, that's another company, we created a product and we created content to market the product. So we would release videos on YouTube with the intention of building awareness and creating desire for the product or solution that we made. And it didn't really garner the attention that we wanted, and we couldn't figure out why sales weren't moving. The critical lesson that we learned, it was to create content to help people, and through the act of goodwill and building that trust, over time, they're going to want to buy whatever it is that you make. And that's a relationship that we have now with our community. I can call them customers, but they're more communities.
Yeah.
And this word gets thrown around a lot, and I'm a little nervous even to introduce it into our dialogue. But there is a fervor, a loyalty that I'm not even sure I've earned or deserve that might be borderline a cult-like behavior that people have for us. And I think all brands in the 21st century that are worth billions of dollars have that exact same attribute.
I think I sort of know why you have that high level of followership is because you're very engaged with the community. You write back. I don't know if you have someone that does that for you or it's you, but I see you're so active. You reply to their questions or you make comments about their comments. So I think that's a big reason why you can call it a community, because it's a dialogue and not just a one-way conversation.
Yeah. There are 3 people who work on my account. Me, myself, and I. When you're dealing with me, not the company, when you're dealing with Chris on any social platform, 99.9% of the times it's me.
While we're on that subject, how much time do you devote to spending time engaging with the community, like answering DMs or emails?
I want to tell you that it's 2 hours, but it's probably more like 6 hours every day.
Wow.
It's half of my waking time. I'm probably commenting, responding to, or dealing with somebody's question somewhere online.
You mentioned that you came to the U.S. as a refugee from Vietnam, and I can relate. I wasn't a refugee, but we're both immigrants from another country. I've also noticed that you started recently sharing your origin story on social media. Why now?
I will tell you a couple of like my own limiting beliefs around this, in that I thought that no one's interested in hearing about my story. So I only tell people about my story when they ask. But when my students would do a studio tour, they already knew about me as a teacher and as a professional. So naturally, they would ask me lots of questions about me, my life, challenges that I've had, and I would share that. I think it's really important for us to give value to other people, to try to help them go from where they are to where they'd like to be. And in doing so, you build community, you build kinship, and you really create genuine value to others. And I want to share this with you and your audience, because I saw Aaron Draplin, who I consider a professional friend. We've talked a couple of times. We've seen each other in multiple places. And I saw him get on stage, on the biggest stage for creatives, in front of 9,000-ish people, and do his thing.
Yeah, at Adobe Max.
So I started thinking to myself, next year, 2024, will be the tour in which I tell my story. And it's going to be a good story because I've already started writing the outline to it, because there's lots of funny things. I think I'm going to call the story, or the title of the talk, Design is a Gateway Drug.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm so looking forward to that. I'm just one of so many that can relate to your story of just coming to a new country, not knowing the language, not having a lot, like you mentioned, growing up. But look where you are today. And it's funny that you brought up Aaron Draplin, because he was my guest on episode 9, and he is just an amazing individual human being. I have mad respect for his authenticity, and I have mad respect for you too. It's just mind-blowing, honestly. You've said that you're an ambivert. And let me explain, because I think a lot of people don't know what that means. Ambiverts are people who fall somewhere in the middle of being an introvert and an extrovert. So ambiverts are flexible individuals who thrive both in solitude and social settings. How has being an ambivert hurt or helped you in your journey as a creator or a business owner?
I'm an immigrant. English is not my first language. I had some difficulty to pronounce multisyllable words, polysyllabic words. And so when I was in school, I kept my mouth shut. Now, let's add to that, there are very few Asian people when I'm growing up in the town in which I'm growing up. So I'm already feeling like an outsider, because I would get into fights with people who would throw racial slurs at me, or just to try to pick on me because I'm small. I'm small and skinny. And so I'm dealing with a lot of that stuff. I just want to get through class every day without a problem. I want to be able to walk to school and come back home without someone starting trouble with me. That was just my only desire. So of course, if you take a personality test in that state of mind, so naturally it comes out, I'm an introvert. And I'm like, I'm an introvert, right? And we have to just clarify for a lot of people, they think being an introvert is being shy and being an extrovert is being gregarious and very outgoing. It has nothing to do with that. It's about how you manage energy. So when you're around a lot of people, introverts need to take time alone and recharge. So you know you're an introvert when during COVID, you felt really happy and thriving because you were just at home, not having to drain your battery. And all the extroverts suffered mightily. They went into depression. They got into fights with people. They had cabin fever. They just couldn't handle it anymore because they need to be around people. Not to say that introversion is good or bad, nor extroversion is good or bad. It just is. So when I first started teaching, there was the mental load that was happening with me and managing the energies of 15 to 20 people in class. It would take me about a day and a half to recover. So it wrecked me. But I noticed something. Eventually just become a day. 3/4 of a day, and then half a day, and then a quarter day, and then I could sort of be semi-normal the next day. And so I think there's a whole spectrum, and I think I must fit somewhere in the middle. So when I learned about this term ambivert, and if you think ambidextrous, the ability to use both hands, you're somewhere in that spectrum. I'm not sure where I am. But I know now when I'm around people that I feel like I have a connection to, even if we're complete strangers, I'm excited to see them.
Yeah. Thank you for that wonderful explanation. But talking about how people recharge, how do you recharge? Besides spending time alone, and when you're alone, is it just doing nothing? I know as a loud introvert, I relish going home, getting on my sofa and with cozy blankets and reading a book or writing a letter, writing in my journal. How do you recharge, Chris?
You're way more productive than I am. Let me just tell you that. So I just got back literally last Friday from a 2-week crazy 6-city tour talk, right? So I get home and I'm on a different time zone mentally and physically. So the first thing I do is I just sit on the couch, turn on YouTube and whatever it is that I want to watch. And I just want to chill there with a blanket. And I have a notepad near me, though it rarely gets used, just in case that idea pops up. I need time to process.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is by not adding additional mental load or more processing, I'm able to reflect back on the last 2 weeks. And I'm slowly decoding those experiences. And this is something that I encourage a lot of people to do, to be able to sit alone in our own thoughts.
Yeah, it's so important to take breaks. Where do you find inspiration?
Okay, this one's an easy one.
I know you probably get asked this all the time.
Well, it's not that. It's just that because it's related to a question you asked earlier about how much time I spend on social responding to people. And I get inspired by people, and not the way that you think. This is not me like in a circle and we're like singing Kumbaya and just playing drums and things like that. I'm going to say this, it's going to come out rough. I get inspired by sometimes the stubbornness and stupidity of people. I'll just say it like that. Because people don't understand this about me. I learn in the friction. So if I say, always charge this price, and they do, there's no friction. I'm like, no one wants to hear this. Okay, I guess it must be obvious to everybody. That's what I think.
Uh-huh.
But when people fight back at me, like, why would I want to charge more? This is robbery. It's unethical. I'm like, oh yeah, let's go, baby. So that starts another thread. It starts another conversation. It starts another piece of content. And so oftentimes they come back with a lot of vitriol, but I just sit there and think, what is the real question underneath this? Do you need a hug? What's going on here? Because those emotions fire me up. And I'll tell you something, it is very difficult for me to write in a very zen state. I need something to spark me. That's why I'm in the comments all the time.
I get it. That makes sense to me that you're getting inspired by the feedback that you're getting, which reminds me of this really clever thing you did. I saw that video that you did. It's called Christo is a Fraud.
Yes.
And I thought, wow, he is so smart and clever to address this, right? At first I was like, why would he do that? But then I got it. You were able to really show why. Like you debunked all of the things that he was thinking or feeling.
Yeah. Can I give you some context to that video?
Of course.
Okay. So the guy that's on the show, his name is Mike Winkleman, but he happened to get on a Zoom call with us and we're going to do some content. And he has a Midwestern accent. He looks a little like Bill Gates, just so you guys can visualize this. And he's like, Dow, what do we talk about? I'm like, I don't know. What's on your mind? What's firing up your world? It's like, I know what. I don't feel this way, but a lot of people think you're a snake oil salesman. I'm like, that's what we'll do the show about. Now, for those art historians in this group, who is Mike Winkleman? Mike Winkleman, also known as Beeple, sold one of his NFT projects for $69.3 million a couple of years ago.
What?
That is who is calling me a fraud. Yeah.
What?
So now you know as they say, the rest of the story.
Wow. Well, for my audience, if you haven't seen that video on YouTube, you got to find it. It's amazing. Just last week, I had this incredible, invaluable, amazing time with design students at one of our Adobe creative retreats. I asked the students, I go, hey, my last guest for the podcast is Chris. What questions do you have for him? This one has to do with what the Futur calls the 1 billion mission, which is, I quote, to teach 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love without losing their soul, end quote. One of the students, M, want to give you a shout out and thank you for your question, wanted me to ask you this. Do you think we can work in design without exploiting or being exploited? This is because M recently moved to San Francisco and is seeing all the homelessness and the high cost of living. Em is curious what you think about that.
First of all, thank you, Em, for that question. It's a good question. I would love to have a conversation with you about this versus making assumptions about what you mean. So let's just unpack the operative word here, which is exploitation or exploit. Exploit sounds like you're taking advantage of something. That's a loaded word. And I'm wondering why Em is asking this question. She could have said, take advantage of or find an opportunity in. But I think the word exploitation or exploitive sounds like it has a negative tint to it. But I just wanted to frame this. Like in some utopian society, we exchange value with no money. We just do things because of the spirit of generosity. And I'd like to live in that world. But that world doesn't seem to be present in the moment. And so we're always exchanging value. So this gets into the question of where leverage is. So for example, if you're a new student and you just graduated, you have a mountain of student debt. So now you need to pay down this debt and you need to make a living for yourself. So then you run into a business owner who has a need for what it is that you do. Since they don't have the education, the training, and the time, frankly, to do what it is they need, you are exploiting their lack of education or experience by charging them something that's fairly easy for you to do. And they are also exploiting you by giving you money, which comes easily to them, which they make lots of, and they're going to give you that so that you can make the problem go away. So I see it as a mutual exploitation. Here's where it gets real interesting, is did you both go into with open arms and open mind saying, we agree to this, and if we both agree, how could we be exploiting each other? I don't know where the problem is.
Here's another question. Should we take remote jobs or should we try to find an in-person opportunity when looking for that first job at a school? But on the flip side, I want to ask, do you think the university students or people can learn as much working at a firm when you're not in person with colleagues?
I think rather than saying better or worse, I just think it's different.
Different.
I know what it's like to walk the floor with a room full of designers and say, oh, let me sit down with you. I noticed you're doing this and there's a more efficient or effective way of doing that. And then they learn something and I could see it in their eyes. I can't do that anymore. So I think we need to do some hybrid version of this.
Yeah.
I think there are ways to work around this. And I think each person can use their own imagination and creativity to find a better way. We don't have to go to the old way because I think this is an opportunity to do it better and even more efficient than we used to.
Yeah. So one final question from the group of students. You started your own firm very early in your career. So you didn't spend a lot of time working for other design firms.
Yes.
One of the students asked, what was the reason behind that? Did you just want to not work for anyone? Or did you especially feel you knew how to manage people and create a vision for the people to follow and want to be a part of?
I'm going to give you the short answer and then I'm going to give you the real answer.
Okay.
The short answer is I'm impatient, I'm arrogant, and I'm unemployable. That's the short answer. I'm impatient because I've always dreamt about having my own business since I was selling candy and getting in trouble all over school trying to make a buck. I have that entrepreneur spirit. And I'm arrogant because I think because I'm good, I could do anything. Like I live in that kind of abundance mindset. So I think I'm going to start a business and of course it's going to be successful. Of course I'm going to win awards. Of course I'm going to get the best projects. That's not true, but that's how I think of it. And I'm unemployable in that I went from working at an ad agency in a very corporate place to working at a punk rock music label and not finding myself in either one of these spaces. And so very shortly I quit. And I was thinking, I think I have to make my own company because this is not working. Now, I want to caveat in all the companies I've ever worked for, either full-time or freelance, I did my very best. And I have to say this, I think this is true. They loved me, but despite them liking me more than I like them, I had to do what was right for me. The long answer. I'm freelancing at this place called Novacom because at this point in time, Novacom was one of the hottest broadcast design shops in the world. And it was the congregation of some of the most talented designers and visual effects artists in one building. And here I am, still wet behind the ears, straight out of school, just messing up, but working there and them offering me a job. And then I get a message out of the blue from my uncle, my dad's younger brother. He said, since I've known you, you've always wanted to run a business. How would you like to start a design company? Let's go, baby. You had me at design, I'm in. And like, what are the terms? So he told me this. He said, my business partner, and my uncle's an attorney, my business partner and I, we create boutique hotels all over the world. And we would like to have a design company handle all our design and marketing. So not only would we be your partners in this, we would just supply you with endless amounts of work. And this is a win-win-win. And I'm not talking about Vietnamese names here. It's W-I-N, okay? It's that kind of win. So I'm like, yes, let's do this. They own 51% of the company, which in my immature 23-year-old mind, I had a hard time with. I'm like, why do you guys own more? I run the whole company. It's our money. We need control. So get this. I write up a business plan, which I know nothing about. I asked for $100,000 in a cash injection for them to buy the 51%. We're sitting at the Westin Bonaventure, I think, having dinner. And Bob, the business partner, reaches in his coat jacket. It's either he's going to shoot me or something weird's going to happen. And he pulls out his checkbook. I'm like, what is happening? He writes a check for $5,000 on the spot to my name, tears it out and gives it to me, said, this is a good faith gesture. I'm 23 years old. I've never even seen $5,000 before.
Wow.
And for what? We don't even know. They're just pre-agreeing to this whole thing. And I was like, this is amazing. So I run home. I'm like, I deposit the check in my account. It feels so good for it to be more than $100, right? And we start our business.
Yeah.
Now, here's the weird thing.
Wow.
I start making calls to people I know, and work is already coming in, because in that short amount of time, which I was hopping from company to company, I created a bit of a reputation. So from the ad agency, they gave me work. From the punk rock music label, I was getting work. And from Novacom, I was getting work as a freelance creative. And I just started. Now, the story has some interesting twists to it. We're a couple of months in. Yeah. I'm cash flow positive. I already have a few part-time employees. And I was thinking, where's the rest of the $95,000? Where's this guaranteed work? And I was getting upset because I'm arrogant and impatient. I've established that part.
Impatient, yes.
I'm arrogant and impatient. I called my uncle. I'm a little upset. I said, Uncle, what is going on? Why don't we have money? And he said, we're having some issues with one of our properties overseas. This is small fish for us. He goes, we will breach the contract. You keep that good faith gesture. I felt really guilty. It was like, I didn't do anything. He goes, that's how business is done, kid. I changed the company name and we start again. And it's a very powerful lesson in this, in that a lot of us are waiting for some sign, for a permission slip from someone or something so that we can go into business for ourselves. All I needed was an imaginary $100,000 coming to me and an endless supply of work, which never came, by the way. I never needed the $5,000. I never needed that work because from day one, we were running a profitable company and we're off to the races. I just needed the courage to believe in myself. And that's a lesson I would like everyone to really take to heart.
Yeah, I love that story. Actually, it's not a story. It's part of your journey. And it reminds me that no matter where you are, you got to show up and build that reputation, like you said. Just because you know you're not going to be there forever, it's like a stepping stone kind of job, or you hate it, or you're bored, you still got to show up and do the work.
Yes.
And my final question for all my guests is, what is your one word for 2024? One word that's going to guide you or inspire you?
My word for 2024 is rebuild.
What are you going to rebuild?
Everything.
Wow.
Yeah, because I've learned this from my previous business coach. And it can be summed up this way. And essentially, it's what got you here won't get you there. You can't keep using the playbook from the past to get you to some future that's way beyond where you are. So everything we did got us to the first million. Everything that we did then had to be thrown away to get us to the 3 million. And I'm determined to build a $10 million company. So I know we have to reinvent, we have to rebuild, because everything that we've done to this point will keep us here, and I need to let go. So it's one of these things that I try to teach people is the art of detachment. You got to let go of your old ideas about your old identities and processes. If you want to innovate, you have to break things, and it's going to be really messy and it's going to be really ugly. But in order for us to become a $100 million company, we need to be a $10 million company first. And so I got to break everything to rebuild.
I learned so much. Thank you so much, Chris. I don't even know how to thank you for saying yes to supporting this podcast, supporting me. I really Really so appreciate it. I'm going to get all teary. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I want to say something. And the reason why I said yes to you so fast, there are two companies that are part of my history, my life. One is Apple, the other is Adobe. One makes the hardware to empower my dreams. The other gives me the tools to articulate those dreams. And I have a deep, maybe lopsided affectionate connection to these two companies.
What a great way to end the season. Really, thank you. It was truly an honor and such a privilege for me to speak with Chris today. I took away so much from our conversation, and I hope you did as well. As always, here are just some of my key takeaways. 1. Let go of the way you have done things in the past. It might be scary to let go of what's been successful for you in order to pursue bigger goals, but it's necessary to try new ways of doing things. What got you here might not work to get you where you want to go. 2. Chris had the courage to start his own business once someone else asked him to do it. Don't underestimate the power of believing in yourself. You don't have to wait for outside validation to do something big. 3. Do the work to know yourself and play to your strengths while being honest about your limitations. Whether that means you work best with a team or as a solo operator, own it, because that is what is going to make you thrive. You can follow Chris on social media at The Christo, that's spelled TheChrisdo, and you'll also find the links in our show notes. This is In the Making, and I'm Teresa Au, your host and executive producer. Our producers for the show are Chrysanthi Tenitence and Lisa Campbell, and our sound editor is Amy Ferrati. We want to hear from you as we wind down our very first season. We're giving away 2 12-month memberships to Adobe Creative Cloud to respondents to our podcast survey, which you'll find the link for in our show notes. Follow us at Adobe Live on Instagram and on YouTube to keep in touch between episodes. And please email us at inthemaking@adobe.com with any of your feedback, questions, and suggestions. This is In the Making, and I'm your host, Teresa Au. I'm so excited to be bringing you this podcast with intimate stories and life lessons from the creator economy. Even if you've never heard of the creator economy, you might be a part of it already. The creator economy is where creativity, the online world, and business meet. And this economy is leading to new kinds of creative careers. On In the Making, you'll hear from content creators, communicators, marketers, designers, and the folks who do a little bit of everything, the slashies. Their stories will inspire you, and their hard-won lessons may be useful to you in your own journey. So, join me every 2 weeks for revealing and honest conversations where we get to find out together how these creators overcome the challenges of being small business owners and creatives at the same time. And a very special welcome to those who found us from the Wireframe feed. We'll be taking over the previous Adobe podcast where Koi Bin left off. I'm so glad you're here. So let's get into it. Today, I have the immense pleasure of speaking with John Yousai, one of few marketers to work at both YouTube and Instagram. John is known for cracking the code to going viral. He has worked with YouTube's top creators and brands to grow their audience and their incomes. At Instagram, John helped empower even more creators to grow and monetize. Now a creator himself, John has garnered 500,000 followers, 300 million views, and has interviewed luminaries like Danny Duncan, Logan Paul, Paris Hilton, Terry Crews, Charli D'Amelio, and one of my favorites, Mark Rober. Love Mark. He is also a sought-after advisor, investor, and speaker who serves as head creator advisor for the analytics platform TubeBuddy. John has been featured in Business Insider, Time Magazine, Inc. Magazine. He's been on NPR and on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Welcome, John. I'm so honored to have you as my guest today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Tell me the moment you decided to leave the corporate world and go out on your own as a creator.
During the pandemic, you kind of question everything. My wife and I were planning our wedding and we are kind of looking like years ahead. We're like, all right, if we get married in a year, we have a kid, maybe 2 years after that, what is me being a creator look like? And I loved my jobs on Instagram and YouTube. And I just remember like, okay, I'm going to try to do this and try to de-risk it before I go. So I was able to line up some partnerships and just like make it so that it was still definitely a risk and go out there. But it was one that was like, if I don't take this now, it's going to be riskier in the future. And I'm talking to you as like, we're just about to have our baby. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I want to be able to like look at my daughter when she's older and be like, I took that chance and I'm not here wondering coulda, woulda, shoulda. We're actually doing it. And my wife is my business partner. I feel like a lot of things went into that decision to leave that were like big life forces.
Yeah, you actually took your destiny into your own hands, right? You created your future, the one that you want. So amazing. Congratulations. And ever since then, you've garnered like I said, a whole bunch of followers. And I'm curious to know what your definition of an influencer is and what does it mean to you? Because everyone seems to want to be an influencer.
I look at it a bit differently because a lot of people talk about influencer. To me, like influence is an output that you can't always control. What can you control? Inputs. And so I like to think about what are the things that I'm controlling? What's the pieces of content that I like to put out and hopefully can educate creators and make them like more aware of all the things going on in the creator economy, which is my whole goal with my content, and just talk about the things I couldn't talk about when I worked inside YouTube and Instagram for 8 years. Now that I'm on the outside, if you ask a lot of like top folks, they will never call themselves an influencer. But if they happen to do that, that's a good like byproduct that they're well on their way. I think about more of the inputs of how can I make the best videos possible and just think about different formats that people haven't put out yet.
You said you think about inputs, right?
Yeah.
So what is your ultimate goal? What do you want to put out there?
I want to put out the best educational content on YouTube, period. And I say YouTube because long form right now that's the home for it. But that educational content could be about Instagram, YouTube itself, TikTok, Discord, LinkedIn, just Snap, all these platforms that I like to say, like, I feel like a Pokemon that's evolving right now. I got to work inside two of these companies that very few people have like the chance to do. Now I'm on the outside growing as a creator, and I want to be able to talk about all the things I'm seeing, because if you know how to put the puzzle pieces together and play the game a bit, it shouldn't take crazy amounts of time to figure it out. I just feel like a lot of people are trying to grow on social media in 2023 using strategies from 2015. If you look at the way these companies put out products, the way they put out tests, the way they even write press releases, there's just so many things I've learned on the inside. I was like, it's just really about where to pay attention to and where to put your chips at different times as you play the game.
Yeah, let's shift gears and talk about going viral, right? Because everyone also wants to go viral. So do you feel like people need to go viral to be successful?
I like to think about, like to draw a sports analogy from baseball. I'm like, I think I'll get singles and doubles by making this content. Maybe every now and then I'm going to like get a triple. But you should definitely have your content that's like, all right, I am going to go after a home run. I'm going to wind up the bat and get a bigger swing. I'm going to try to go viral, to answer your question. But you can't just try to take big swings every time, because either you're going to get tired, you're not even going to be able to swing the bat, you're going to strike out, which will happen, and then you're going to forget about getting the singles and doubles. So like to put that in a very specific, like how does that relate to folks listening or to creators? My consistent format is my interviews with top creators and celebrities, everyone ranging from, the folks you mentioned, like interviewing Logan Paul, Jake Paul, Mark Rober, Paris Hilton, and really understanding how can an aspiring creator learn from these people. But my home runs are like, I spent 24 hours with Danny Duncan. And he's this amazing YouTuber who's one of the youngest landowners in the state of Florida. He owns over 100 acres and has made all that money, majority of it, through the business he's built on YouTube. And I was like, what if in addition to the interview that I do sitting down with him, I spend a day with him going around to his properties, talking about his businesses, and make that video called 24 Hours with Danny Duncan. That video got 1.6 million views. It's brought in more brand deals, more interest than any other video on our channel. And it's kind of brought people to watch our consistent content, which is our interviews. So, but if I tried to do 24 hours with like every single creator, like that video took 3 months to produce. And who knows if they would all perform that well. I wouldn't be like able to sustain that, at least not right now. So I think it's important to have like your singles and doubles, and then every now and then, again, wind up to hit a home run, but not just go for the home runs and try to go viral, because otherwise it's not going to be sustainable.
So speaking of building an audience, and you said that video got over 1 million views, what are the best ways to grow your audience?
I think the best way to grow your audience is to poll your audience.
Poll your audience.
Yeah, what I mean by that is, and again, this also surprises me that a lot of people don't do it. Everyone's like, your audience is your community, and that's true, but your audience is also your focus group. So if people follow me on social media, whether on Instagram or on LinkedIn predominantly, you'll notice I ask a lot of questions to my audience. I will poll them about, hey, I'm thinking about interviewing this person. Would you be interested? I'm thinking about trying out this content. Is that interesting? Here are 4 different formats I'm thinking about trying out. What are you most interested in? I will look at that poll data as if I am a marketing firm, like using that audience to research and give me inputs, because 2 things will happen. One, it's actually valuable. It's signal versus noise. Like they don't, oh, wow, there's no interest in me doing this interview, so I'm not going to waste my time. Like, okay, maybe they're not interested. They're not trending. It's not worth it right now. Maybe I'll bring it up later time. Number 2, I'm a firm believer that if you bring somebody along the journey, they'll be more interested in the outcome. You know, like I think a lot of people want to be creators, but maybe they're not set up to be it. So they want to know what's going on behind the scenes right now. And so I will share my thumbnails. I will share my interview form. If people join my Discord, I will share a lot of stuff even earlier in that process. And that feedback, I think people are like, whoa, I changed this. John listened to this. I have my fingerprints on this. And I think that's an interesting thing. I think the best way to grow your audience is to poll your audience, and not enough people do that. I mean, that's the whole reason my podcast is called Created with John Yousai, because everything I make is with. It's like you're creating with me. It's not just by me.
Yeah, you're not doing it alone.
No.
I love what you said, just bringing them along, because it's for them.
Right.
It's not for you.
100%.
Yeah. If you're creating content to promote your business, right? What should you be thinking about that's different from someone who's creating content to go viral or to be an influencer?
To me, it's the same. If people say I'm trying to create to become an influencer, you're probably not going to it's too focused on output, not input. Versus when I consult clients or brands or creators and they're like, I'm going to try to get 4 videos up this month. Now we're talking. That's an input, not an output. If they say I'm trying to hit this many followers or I'm trying to influence it, those are just things that are too hard to track. And I'm guilty of it as well. For example, our goal is to hit 500,000 followers by September. And right now we're at 355,000 on YouTube. That's an output goal, but it needs inputs of uploads every 2 weeks. And our goal is to get to every week to get there, right? So if people are listening to this and they're small business owners, what are the ways that you can lower friction to make it easier to upload more, create more, as opposed to hitting X number of followers or going viral?
How do you stay focused and not get caught up in chasing the likes or the subscribers? Because, I'm sure it wasn't always that you had so many followers, right? When you were starting out, how do you stay focused on what you're trying to accomplish? Or what advice would you give? Because I know so many people starting out that just want 10,000 followers or 100,000 followers.
It's ironic. The less you post, the more you fixate on metrics. So I find that oftentimes if I post one video that I work so hard on, and then I don't upload anything else, I fixate on what the numbers are on for that specific video. But if I'm posting all these different things, like a short, a video, a text post on LinkedIn, and I'm okay, I'm kind of looking at it as a whole, what's going on across my content, and I could take a more objective macro view than an emotional micro view. Just figure out a way to actually upload more and then think about it as a whole as opposed to fixating on one.
What do you think the most successful content creators like yourself have in common?
I think behind every great creator is a great partner, manager, friend. I'm lucky that my partner, manager, and best friend is my wife. She's my business manager. She thinks about all the operations. For every new project that I get shiny object syndrome about, oh my God, we got to do this because it's new. She's like, what's the return? Why are we doing this? What will be the opportunity cost? I find that the more and more I meet creators, there's somebody behind the scenes or off camera that is helping them think about that. And I think the creators that don't, you could see it and how it leads to burnout.
Yeah, having that person behind the scenes thinking about the business part of it to leave you more time and space to be creative with ideas and all that. So yeah, you're very blessed. I've met her. So yes, you have a great
Thank
team
you.
behind you.
Yeah.
So how do you and your wife and your team measure success? What does that look like for you?
I almost think of ourselves not just as a creator studio or a modern media company, but we're a creative agency and a media company all in one. We'll bring in clients and help either consult on their social media and creator strategy or manage like some of their social media pages and produce content. So we're part social media and creative agency, and that helps bring in a lot of revenue. We have a lot of like blue chip brands as clients. And the other part is social media growth and revenue through sponsorships, courses, public speaking. So kind of like looking at two sides of the house and measuring growth and revenue as top line success metrics.
Yeah, so I know you do a lot of public speaking. How do you find the clients where you're doing the social strategy for?
They come to us. Here, I'll give you a story. I uploaded a video on my YouTube channel where I basically talked about like ex-YouTube employee explains how to grow your channel. I share how, during my time at YouTube, starting in 2014, the late night hosts, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, James Corden, Seth Meyers, like really took to YouTube in different ways. And I talk about how James Corden, who in the United States at least was one of the more relatively unknown, like to the point where he tried to, in this first week, at work, he tried to like go out for lunch and come back, and his security guard wouldn't even let him back into his studio because he didn't recognize him, right? Like that's James Corden, like 2013, 2014 versus James Corden now. So anyways, in the video, I talk about like there's two types of creators in this world, the Cordens and the Colberts. And the Corden style creators are what James Corden has done with his YouTube channel, which is he has many formats, many experiments, carpool karaoke, spill your guts, crosswalk musical. Like if you look at his channel, tons of formats. Colbert, no knock on him, just doesn't have as many formats as Corden. Monologue, desk bit, interview, musical act. Like there's a few other things he does, but that by and large, if you study his YouTube channel, is all he's done. Anyways, I say all this to answer your question. After that happened, I got on a call with Stephen Colbert's team to talk about their YouTube strategy. By putting out content, we've been getting leads to bring us on. And it happens from Fortune 500 companies, the creators who are like, hey, John, can you fly in, help me redo my studio and my like basically pre-production and production pipeline and help me think about how I could go from short form to long form. Help me think about how I could cut costs in production.
Yeah. Well, you're pretty well known on the net, so I'm sure there's a lot of inbound. But a follow-up question to the Colbert example. He has an audience, right, that loves his current format. So how do you weigh trying out new things versus not alienating your existing audience with something that they're not expecting?
People like to knock the algorithm. That's where the algorithm can help. Because if it's not taking off, I always like to say, okay, how many people in the audience have heard of carpool karaoke? Everyone raises their hand, right? And then I'm like, how many of you guys have heard of this format James Corden does called Celebrity Noses? Nobody raises their hand. It's like a format where he basically analyzes whose celebrity nose is this? And he does this whole bit. And it's actually pretty funny, but nobody has really seen it. If you do a format, it doesn't take off and people don't see it, then they don't see it. And I think there's a self-awareness there to be like, okay, I tried at least 5 of them. They don't work. Let me pivot and try a different format. But who knows? Like if you didn't try out that format, then you wouldn't have known if it would have taken off. And I think there's a reason why Corden has 6, 7 successful formats where many of the other late night show hosts don't. You don't have to deviate from what's working. You just have to add an experiment and be honest of what's hitting with the audience versus not.
I'm all about experimentation and iteration. So I love that. So as popularity of platforms shift, how do you advise creators to focus their attention on what will help them grow their business?
When it comes down to how you build an audience, I think it comes down to supply and demand. So where is the most demand and the least supply, at least right now? So like LinkedIn is a great example of there's a lot of demand. There's, hundreds of millions of people who come to the platform every day, but there's not a lot of supply, at least not on the level of other platforms. So that means there's an opportunity for you as a creator to post stuff that will get views. A lot of people are like, oh, is LinkedIn like a place I should post? And I'm like, that's the opportunity. If people are questioning it and there's people going to it, then that's probably a place you should be posting. YouTube Shorts is another one. It's become more saturated even in the past 6 months. Instagram broadcast channels. Now we're talking about features within a platform because that's just where we're at in 2023. I think it comes down to supply, demand, and then what can you actually deliver as a business or as an entrepreneur trying to juggle many other responsibilities.
As someone in the thick of things, do you watch content? Who do you follow and who do you watch? Are there any up-and-coming creatives that you would advise me to follow or check out?
To me, you know what's interesting? I follow more stuff outside of our industry because one of my big philosophies is the best way to succeed within your industry is to look outside of it. So I'll look at like real estate videos. I'll look at like ASMR. I'll look at things like going on in the cooking world. Actually, my wife will give me a lot of inspiration because her feed is very different than mine. I'm like, whoa, that's a really interesting way that they cut the camera together. There's a really interesting way that they formatted it. It's more video specific.
Speaking of videos, which of your videos have you been most proud of?
The Danny Duncan one, the 24 hours with Danny Duncan.
I saw that one. I loved it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I did like that a lot.
Yeah. So for that one, it's like we spent a day with Danny, who's this amazing creator who's been on the platform for many years, 7 million subscribers. But the more incredible thing and unique thing is that he's sold $150 million worth of merch. And he's bought over 100 acres worth of land in his hometown of Florida. And he was homeless at one point on his journey up.
I know. I saw that.
It's crazy. People haven't told this story in that way before. So that's one I'm really proud of. And then every interview, my goal is I want it to be the best interview with that person on the internet. And if there's something that is known about them or they're a really familiar person, I'm like, what's something unfamiliar that people don't know about? How can I make you think and make it applicable to all creators, even though they're big creators?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to do that with this podcast. If you weren't a creator, what do you think you'd be doing? What kind of skills do you have that would translate to another passion or way of earning a living?
Oh, I'd be a product marketing manager at one of these companies and continuing down the path and one day hopefully be a CMO. Like I was on that path. I was doing that.
Yeah. But this is so much better for you.
So there's a John Youshaei in a different multiverse that's like, I like this security. I like the trajectory. But to me, the scariest thing was, if I close my eyes and I look 10, 15 years ahead, I see the position in the company that if I work hard enough, I could get. Versus if I close my eyes right now, I don't even know what the ceiling is. There's just so much exciting stuff happening within our team and the inbound we're getting that I'm like, let's ride this wave.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's next for you?
We're working on a newsletter that I know everyone has a newsletter. This newsletter, I think, will be very different than ones that people have seen.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We were looking at the initial versions of it in the mocks. Like, it's looking great and it's different. Like I know there's a ton of newsletters out there and people open them, ignore some, but this one I'm like, wow, it just feels a very modern take on it.
So I know we're almost at time. Do you see Gen AI as a creative tool or something to fear in the video world?
No, absolutely a creative tool. Absolutely.
Have you used it yourself?
Of course.
How have you used it?
I'll give you a very concrete example. Just 3 days ago, I'm working on a thumbnail for my next YouTube video. And obviously I use Photoshop for my thumbnails. And I am like, the background is kind of cluttered. And I really want people to focus on the face of the person I'm interviewing in the thumbnail. So we use like the generative fill feature on Adobe Photoshop beta. And we filled it in and now it looks even better. And we do that for a lot of stuff. I think right now, generative AI solves like what I like to call the first draft problem, or like it's like something to collaborate with, not be replaced by.
Exactly. That's so good to hear. Okay, so what is one word that's going to guide you for the rest of 2023? I asked this of all my guests.
Family.
Bingo. I love it. Family first. Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was so fun. And I learned a lot myself just from talking to you. There's a lot of tips that I can try myself. So appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy guy.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me on and looking forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you so much, John. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with John Yousai today and that he's given you some tools and inspiration to build your online presence. I loved hearing his perspective and learnings from having worked on the very platforms he creates for today. The takeaways that stood out to me were: 1, working with a trusted partner makes your output better. It can give you greater bandwidth for creativity, the safety to experiment, a sounding board for new ideas, an honest critic, and someone to celebrate with. 2, if you're too focused on the likes every time you post, put that energy into posting more. The more you post, the more objective you can be about the results, and the metrics will be more meaningful. 3, if you bring someone along on your journey, they'll be more interested in the results. Ask your audience what they want, pay attention to their reactions, and evolve what you're making based on that input. And lastly, sometimes the best inspiration can come from outside your own industry. Diversify the content you consume and keep your eyes out for lessons in unexpected places. This is In the Making, and I'm your host, Teresa Au. I'll be back with a new guest and new inspiration from the creator economy every 2 weeks. So please take a few seconds to follow this podcast. And if you like this episode, be sure to give us a rating and a review in your favorite podcast app. We're brand new, so we'd really appreciate it if you share the show with your friends, family, and colleagues. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in a fortnight.